Okay, wow, look, we're back with another episode of PodCast, the show that has more than two guests. So hi, yeah, it's me again, episode 5. You should introduce yourself, person who I'm stammering, waiting to say something.
Oh, okay. I just sometimes like guests on podcasts just wait until a host specifically talks about them to introduce. I'm Nathan Strisower. I am longtime friend of Cass. That's my only recommendation.
Right,
it's my only qualification.
Right. You actually have several like negative credentials that would are reasons why I shouldn't have let you on here.
What the hell?
The most grievous one being that you talk a lot.
That's the point of a podcast.
Yeah, but
or as the case may be, a podcast.
This you still pronounce the T. This episode's gonna be 4 hours long.
It's okay. We're not talking about hit Broadway musical Hadestown from 2019. So I think we're good.
We're not. We aren't. So what we are going to be talking about today is the 2004 A Series of Unfortunate Events movie, starring a bunch of kids who no one ever heard from again, and Jim Carrey.
How I hate it. Are we going to be talking about the Netflix adaptation?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the first 6 episodes of the Netflix adaptation, which cover the same material as the movie, but significantly better.
Plus an idiotic parent subplot as well.
Right. Well, that just is a non sequitur because we're not going to be covering the end of season 1.
That's true.
So yeah, oh yeah, first, how do I know you?
Well, our parents went to the same vacation spot together for ever. So, as it happens, I knew you for a very, very, very long time, but, in short bursts every year.
Right, you knew me for approximately 1/52nd of every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, that's enough of that. So what A Series of Unfortunate Events, classic series of books for borderline sadistic children to read.
Borderline sadistic, I don't know.
These books, they definitely have, a plot, but you feel like an absolute psycho going for the first, 5 or 6 books, because it's just misery upon misery upon misery with no, actual reason that you can give to yourself while you keep reading.
I think it's awesome.
Oh, yeah, I do, too. So... it's a series of 13 books written by some guy named Daniel Handler under the pseudonym Lemony Snicket.
That's the first thing I want to talk about. Is I feel so betrayed by the fact that his name is not, in fact, Lemony Snicket.
I know.
Even though there's no way it could have been Lemony Snicket.
I was so sad
if
when
you
I
thought
found
about
that
it
out.
For more than 10 seconds.
When I was 9 or whatever.
Yeah, it's messed up.
Yeah, so... The reason is Lemony Snicket is a fictional character, and he wouldn't want to write an autobiography where he's where his entire life's work is dedicated to obsessively cataloging every move of 3 children, including a baby. So these books came out bi-yearly for a couple years, and then yearly for a couple years, and then every other year for a couple years until all 13 were released. They pretty much linearly got progressively longer and progressively gooder.
Yeah. I straight up just don't remember a lot of the middle books because it's been forever since I read them. I do remember the 11th one though, Grim Grotto. That's my favorite one. It's so good.
I honestly think Grim Grotto is a momentary weak point in the series, but
I'm gonna fight about it.
Yeah, but we're not gonna talk about this. If this goes well, we might do more episodes covering the rest of the show. It depends.
Oh no! If this performs, if it gets ratings,
yeah. If the
you're gonna make me dance like a monkey.
Enough.
Oh my god!
Do the thing in the little car.
Or as you people would say the line, Bart.
Right.
Or whatever.
You're talking about me and Holly, right?
Yeah, whatever degenerates like The Simpsons that are listening.
Oh, yeah. Also Lola Wall.
Oh, yeah.
Notably, the movie was released before the last book was, which is sort of a problem that a lot of things run into because I want to strike while the iron's hot, right?
Yeah. I can't remember whether that was the case with the godforsaken The Divergent series.
I don't know. I never read the Divergent series. It definitely was the case with the Harry Potter books.
That's true.
Where they just cut something that was really important from the second book.
It's awesome.
Oops.
Was it like the Diary Horcrux thing?
Yeah,
it like
they
way
cut
that it
some
worked?
like stupid bullshit that ended up being really important. I can't remember what it was.
That's
I just remember that it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah, so Series of Unfortunate Events is basically a series that stars Violet, Klaus, and Sunny Baudelaire. They are children who are orphaned at the very beginning of the series because their parents perished in a terrible fire.
Right.
And so they're...
Everyone will not stop reminding them of this fact.
Yeah, exactly. As you know, comma, your parents perished in a terrible fire.
This series, which is something that both adaptations sort of adapted, is that it sort of like gets off on repeating the same thing over and over and over again with absolutely nothing added to it.
A phrase which here means saying the same information multiple times without
like
changing anything productive.
Like Klaus will read something and he'll learn something about nuptial law, and Violet will be like, "What's nuptial law?" and he'll tell her, and then like they'll go to Count Olaf and he'll be like, "What's nuptial law?" and he'll tell him the exact same definition, and then like Lemony Snicket will pop in with his narration to say, "Nuptial law is a phrase which here means."
I have an anti-gay slur I want to say.
Yeah, you can say it on the podcast. Did you listen to the first episode?
Wait, where was I? Oh, yeah, so for those who don't know and are still listening for some reason, the series is basically about the orphans being carted from guardian to guardian. The first guardian that they meet is a man called Count Olaf, who is terribly evil and is after the fortune that they will come into when the eldest, Violet, comes of age. And so Count Olaf pursues them from guardian to guardian over the course of the books, and they slowly learn that like more stuff is going on behind the scenes.
Right,
so,
everything's connected.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a secret organization that is their parents were part of and that Olaf was also part of, and there's a whole deeper lore to it. But
Notably,
most of the series is...
The secret organization stuff happens almost exclusively in the back half of the series.
Yeah, that's actually super relevant to the godforsaken Jim Carrey version, because I don't think it exists at all in the first three.
Right. And the movie was written in a way that sort of does not plan for a sequel almost explicitly.
Yeah,
which is really weird.
I don't know. It like ends. I think it literally ends with like them and Poe driving off into the sunset.
Right, literally. But yeah, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. But yeah, the movie starts with what we thought was like a super long like publisher or like animation assistant intro.
Oh my god.
But it turned out to be
how I hate it.
A reference to like a single just like unrepeated proper noun that is brought up at one point in the first book, where Lemony Snicket says that instead you could read a more happy book called The Littlest Elf.
Yeah. The Littlest Elf, and they turn that into a whole animated intro for, those keeping score at home that takes up like an entire minute of your life.
Precious time.
No, it's clearly like supposed to be an homage to, like the Christmas Vacation style movies that like open with animated intros, but like it's just so...
It's sort of got like a Rankin Bass look going on. It's competently animated, I guess I could say that. But yeah, and then I don't... Do you remember the name of the actor who plays Lemony Snicket in the movie?
Oh...
I'll look it up. Hold on. Yeah, he comes...
Jude Law.
Yeah.
It's Jude Law. You should like cut out the awkward 10 seconds of silence there.
I won't.
What the hell?
Yeah, there we go. Jude Law. So he plays Lemony Snicket. In the books, Lemony Snicket would narrate throughout the whole thing and like define things for you and like say somewhat black comedy non sequiturs at you.
It's actually a really cool stylistic element of the books that like the narrator is such a character in his own right. Like it kind of makes the books
right, and especially the first couple where the plot's kind of boring.
Where it hard carries like the entire quality of the book.
Yeah, but he'll make references to horrible things that happened in his past, and then be like, anyway, here's what's going on with the Baudelaires.
He'll trauma dump on you about Beatrice fucking dying.
Yeah, each book begins with like saying that the book is written for Beatrice, and then like a pun about how she's dead now.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But yeah, that is something that Lemony Snicket is something that I think the TV show did significantly better than the movie, which is something we'll be saying approximately 2,000 times. But yeah, Patrick Warburton, aka Kronk.
Oh my god, I feel so bad for Jude Law because he didn't even do a bad job. He's just like blown out of the water so hard by a man who was, I say this without a hint of exaggeration, born to play.
Like, made inside a tube to be, like, deadpan
exactly.
Lemony Snicket.
Exactly. So, in the movie, it will... Okay. In the series, Patrick Warburton will sometimes physically be on, like, the same set as the Baudelaire orphans while he's narrating their tragedy in this sort of weird, extra-diegetic kind of way.
Yeah, sometimes he'll be wearing, like, silly costumes which are never addressed.
Yeah.
Like, in the first one, when they're at the beach and they learn that their parents are dead, he's wearing just, like, a lifeguard's swimsuit.
It's great.
And, yeah... whereas Jude Law will be in like some weird ass steampunk clock tower, completely silhouetted, typing on a typewriter.
And look, I liked the Spiderwick Chronicles live action movie when it came out. I am no stranger to weird clockwork addicts. However, I feel like the Patrick Warburton thing is so much better because it sort of preserves the vibe of the book where like the narrator could comment on the action at any moment, and it kind of it sort of removes the momentum of the scene, I feel, to, like, constantly just cut away to Jude Law in this, like, totally other location.
Right, which is why they don't do it that many times. There's only, like, 5 or 6 total Lemony Snicket interruptions throughout the entire movie.
Which, like you said, leaves the plots to carry themselves almost entirely, which is, like,
which
in
is,
the first few books.
Yeah, it's totally the opposite of the show, where each book is broken up into 2 episodes, and each episode has about 5 or 6 of those interjections each.
Yeah.
Which is much more reflective of the actual content of the books, and just better, because that's fun.
Yeah. I feel like there's actually way more interjections, but, like, actual whole sort of monologue type things from Warburton, maybe like 5 or 6.
Yeah,
but he's definitely in it
He
more.
definitely like says little bits and pieces throughout the whole thing.
He's so much more of an active participant in the series than in the movie, which is ironic because he's by definition like a narrator who is piecing together the Baudelaire's lives long after they happen.
Right. The only thing that they do in the movie that sort of recaptures that feel of him being, like, there the whole time is at one point, like, his typewriter jams when, like, at a point of suspense, which I think is a cool thing. But that is definitely not, like, a joke that you can iterate on very much, which is why I definitely prefer the Warburton version.
Yeah. Oh, let me see. I just have the phrase reasonably attractive orphans written down with like 8 question marks.
Oh yeah, at the start of both adaptations, the orphans are described as like reasonably attractive, which I mean I guess they're like played by actors, so they don't look like ugly, except for Louis Hynes.
This is going to be a theme through the podcast too. She fucking hates the guy who played Klaus in the series for no reason. Like, he's fine.
If it's any consolation, I hate him significantly less than I hate each of the child actors in the live action movie.
Really?
While we're talking about like casting with Patrick Warburton, the casting in the live action movie, especially for Klaus, is like laughably bad.
He doesn't have glasses. Like, that's not even an actor level thing. Like, that's just the wardrobe department like not doing their jobs.
Which is weird, because him having glasses is a huge plot point.
It's in the 4th one.
It's in the 4th book, but it's also just like a thing. Like, it's not like fringe. It's on the cover of every single book.
He has glasses because he's a fucking nerd. Like, until the 4th one, when it becomes a central plot point.
Yeah. So yeah. Honestly, the casting for for Violet, the eldest of the 3, who is Kara Hoffman. No, that's Sunny.
It's
Emily Browning in the movie. The series actually, like, they casted someone who looks a lot like her. So I think the series is
looks
better
a lot
cast.
like the Brett Helquist drawing of her.
No, looks a lot like the actress they cast for the movie.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Like it.
yeah. I can barely tell them apart.
Yeah, to be honest, the series definitely owes a lot to the movie. It definitely learned from its failures.
That's a really good way to put it. I think that, like, this, especially the set design in the movie versus the series, is really, really, really similar. And I think part of it is down to the, like, weird kind of Baroque way that the books are written, but also it's clear that, like, they literally thought, oh, that movie made a good set design decision, let's do kind of that.
Right. It's definitely got sort of like a clockwork Victorian sort of steampunk vibe, which was never really implied in the books, but both the show and the movie added.
I feel like it's also the constant use of weird sort of oblique words, and the fact that, like, none of the plots require any sort of modern technology, I believe, to actually work, except for, like, I don't know, phones or whatever.
And the orphans are always, like, illustrated wearing, like, pseudo-Victorian clothes.
Yeah.
So
it's clear that, like, this is a vision that Daniel Handler had for probably since the beginning of the series, is, like, to put them in this weird pseudo-Victorian kind of world.
yeah, it's just never, like, explicitly mentioned.
I also remember him saying in an interview
fits, though.
that, like, he wanted the location of the books to be sort of weird and indeterminate as well, like in the real world. So he gave the orphans the names Violet, Klaus, and Sunny, which are sort of weird, vague, like Pan-American / European names.
Right. It, like, the book the books are pretty solidly, like, just in America, you can tell by vibes, but it's never explicitly stated.
Yeah, and also I feel like part of that might actually be our tendency to just be like, well, it's probably set in America, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may be right about that. The movies, well, actually, the movie, I found this out on TV Tropes today when I was just, like, looking through random things for a completely unrelated reason.
TV Tropes does that to you.
Trying to find the trope where, like, a character's face is conveniently obscured, because I was trying to talk about it to someone else. Like, I was frantically looking through it, trying to find that trope, and I found out that apparently it is mentioned at one point that the movie is set in Chicago.
I, like, hate that so much for reasons I can't properly articulate.
For some reason, it being Chicago is just... Because whenever they're talking about, like, the city that a couple of the books take place in, it's the city.
Yeah. It's, and, you know, you never really need to get more specific than that, and, like, in fact, getting more specific than that kind of ruins the book's weird, indeterminate vibe that they just have.
Right, like, there's nothing explicitly wrong about Chicago, but for some reason it's so wrong.
Yeah. I don't know.
So, yeah. What do you have next?
Ooh. Poe's casting, I really wasn't sold on... Oh my god, I can't remember whether it's K. Todd Freeman or Todd K. Freeman.
I think it's K. Todd Freeman.
Yeah. Like, I feel like
so first we should explain who Mr. Poe is.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
He's the banker who's been put in charge of, like, the orphans' like, well-being.
Yeah. I feel so bad. Like, we're 19 minutes into this, and I just realized that we haven't given, like, a straightforward summary of what this even is, I think.
Okay.
So Violet, Klaus, and Sunny's parents die in a terrible fire. Mr. Poe tells them, and he becomes their sort of caretaker, social worker, almost, even though he's just a fucking banker. And so he takes them from guardian to guardian, each obviously ending in a terrible travesty, usually...
the death of the guardian for the first couple.
The death of the guardian. Due directly or indirectly to Count Olaf, who is pursuing them in order to get a hold of the fortune Violet will inherit when she comes of age.
Right, Violet's 14, so it's going to be a little while.
Yeah.
And she's the oldest.
So at first Count Olaf takes them into his care and then tries to marry her.
Right, so that he can get a hold of the fortune.
Yeah.
Then they're sent to Comedy Snake Man.
He's awesome. They're sent to is that John Cleese?
Maybe.
I mean, it's Python, haha.
Yeah, I know. I can.
Catherine O'Hara was Justice Strauss in that one.
Oh, weird, because she's the Georgina Orwell.
Oh, yeah, she's the optometrist.
No, it's Billy Connolly in the movie.
So it's one of the Pythons.
Is that one of the Pythons?
He looks like one of the Pythons.
I'm not entirely sure it is, but I don't know.
He's
I'm not like
one of the Pythons.
But anyway, his name's Montgomery, so it's like Monty Python because he likes snakes.
Like, get it. I mean, they got Meryl Streep. I feel like
they got Meryl. So anyway, he dies. They get sent to a third. And
then they get sent to Aunt Josephine,
played by Meryl Streep in the movie.
Played by Meryl Streep, who lives at the top of a very, very tall hill overlooking the Lachrymose Lake. And she dies as well, tragically.
Yeah.
From being eaten by fucking leeches.
So we've described the events in the way they occur in the books. But the weird thing about the movie is that it surgically removes the end of the first book and sticks it onto the end of the movie. So it goes first book start, second book, third book, first book end. But they needed a way for them to get taken away from Count Olaf, so they came up with a wholly original, stupid reason that they put in between the start of the first book and the start of the second book. So
it's the train track scene?
Yeah, the train track scene is not in the books at all.
The train track scene is whole cloth. It's Count Olaf.
We should talk about Count Olaf first.
Okay. Count Olaf is their first guardian. He is described as their cousin 3 times removed or whatever,
like comedically distantly related. But they get sent to him because he's their closest living relative, i.e. he lives close to them.
Yeah,
and so Daniel, you're so funny.
And so he quickly reveals himself to be an extremely cruel man who makes them do awful chores all day in his awful house, and he doesn't like them, he doesn't respect them. He essentially only keeps them around because he knows about their enormous fortune, and he spends all his time hanging out with his awful theater troupe and concocting plans to steal it.
Right, he's an actor, so you know he's bad.
Exactly.
The theater troupe is a big part of the books and the show, but is a relatively minor part of the movie.
Just it's so minor.
It's such a easily cut thing from the movie, and the movie needs all the time it can get with adapting 3 books into 90 minutes.
That's true. The theater troupe doesn't actually become relevant to any of the plots, I believe, other than, just like faceless executors of Count Olaf's will, like minions for the Baudelaires to defeat on the road to the final
mini
boss.
Bosses.
Yeah, exactly. What's the guy from Mario with the awesome blue hair?
Ludwig. Koopa. Yeah, he's one of the Koopa Links. There's a set of 7 mini bosses.
Yeah.
Count Olaf has almost 7 mini bosses for them to fight, and they sort of trade off engaging with one per book until I think book 8, and then they start dying in increasingly brutal ways.
It's okay. So in terms of the delta of quality between the movie and the series, what has improved the most from the movie to the series, the theater troupe has got to be up there, because I fucking love the theater troupe in the series.
Right,
every character
one
is
of the best
awesome.
Parts. Yeah,
and they just don't exist in the movie, so it's nothing versus very good.
They are in the movie, but saying they don't exist is an entirely valid statement.
The powder-faced women, they're my favorite characters from the series.
They're supposed to be identical, and they just they casted 2 people who just don't look very much alike as them.
They gave them the same makeup, and they were like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, they're one of them is 8 inches taller than the other. It's almost comedic, and it almost seems like a weird Daniel Handler
an intentional decision
joke,
where it's haha, they don't look like each other at all.
But that's not a joke.
And you can tell that if it was an intentional joke, the movie would have played it up awkwardly.
Yeah. But anyway, Count Olaf. In the movie, he is played by the lovely Jim Carrey. You may know him as the Grinch.
You may know him as my mortal enemy, whum I must defeat on the fields of battle before the prophecy can be fulfilled.
Right. You might also know him as Dr. Robotnik.
Oh God.
And in the show, it's played by everyone's favorite Neil Patrick Harris, who no one has ever harbored a grudge against, and everyone loves. I'm not like saying that sarcastically, like people hate on Neil Patrick Harris. As far as I know, people like him.
I feel like people really like Neil Patrick Harris. Like,
yeah.
He's one of the most, I hate this word, but like unproblematic sort of stars.
Good thing he's gay.
Immune to Me Too.
Right. But that wasn't even the joke I was making. I was just saying, like, wow, good thing everyone, like, a prominent gay celebrity is unproblematic.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. He good in the show. He bad really in the movie.
I mean, yeah, there's not much more to say. So, part of... I don't think even, like, Jim Carrey himself is, like, 100% of the reason I hate Jim Carrey in this role so much. It's more like that at every single possible second that Jim Carrey is on screen, the movie is like, hey, guess who we got to play Olaf? It's Jim Carrey.
But Jim Carrey. Like, the thing you need to understand about Olaf in the books is that he's, like, he's not, like, a funny villain who you, like, laugh at, and he's not, like, what's the trope called? It's, like, awesome bad man or something.
The, like... guy you love to hate sort of thing?
Yeah, where I think it's called Magnificent Bastard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where you're like, oh yeah, he's not like that. Like, it's not fun to watch him scheme. You want to see him get his ass kicked at every opportunity.
Yeah, he's like... You know, it didn't fully hit me until you said that, but, like, you're absolutely right. Like, he's cartoonish, but not any more cartoonish than, like, the world around him is cartoonish,
yeah.
I feel.
He's, like, cartoonishly evil, but not, like, fun evil.
Mm-hmm.
And
no one's ever going to be like, Count Olaf Slay, he's my favorite character.
Right. He's everyone's least favorite character on... Like,
because he tries to marry his adoptive daughter. Like,
yeah.
That's icky.
Right.
And, like, that sets the tone for 12 more books.
And it just does not work to have him be like, look at all these zany things.
Like a slay Lolita pedophile moment. Like,
and the thing is, they pull like that same kind of crap with Neil Patrick Harris, but for some reason it just works, and I can't really explain it other than.
Well, because Neil Patrick Harris isn't distorting his face like he's the Maitlands from Beetlejuice
he's not like doing
for
like
90 minutes.
Dinosaur noises and stuff. Yeah, he's. I don't know. It just works. It just works with Neil Patrick Harris. He's a much better casting. He's still not perfect because he still does like silly shit sometimes, but like.
They overwrite Count Olaf in both the movie and the series. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But series better.
Series better. You're saying that a lot.
Series better everything. Why aren't we just covering the series? If you like the series so much, why don't you marry it?
I mean, he tried. That's the plot of the first book.
Right.
I have the eye is wrong. I feel like that's your
comment. Oh, yeah. So, a recurring motif and, like, thing in the books is that Count Olaf has a shape of an eye, like a tattoo of the shape of an eye.
That's even an important plot point that's even an important plot point in the movie because like the children quickly realize this and they try to point it out in each of his disguises. He adopts like an absurd disguise in every book that the children can of course see through, but the adults cannot, and so they try and like point out his ankle and try and expose his tattoo because that's like something that Olaf has, and it's a way to
and there's
identify
like increasingly stupid ways that he hides it, like with like a peg leg,
the fucking peg leg,
or like the sneakers he can't take off because he has like plantar fasciitis or something.
I forgot that from the 5th book, but like yeah.
But yeah, so the eye is wrong in that in the later books and in some of like the supplementary materials for the books, the eye was sort of retconned from looking like an eye to looking only vaguely like an eye and actually being a secret font that like spelled out the letters VFD.
Oh yeah, because the secret organization in question that like every second adult in this book are members of is VFD.
Right. And like this is definitely something that Handler retconned, but he had retconned it by the time the movie came out.
So they didn't have an excuse.
They did not have an excuse. Because like in the 4th book, you see like the eye being described very much like it is in the movie, but like they should have changed it because it was just straight up a retcon. There was no cleverness to it.
And they really take the eye imagery and run with it in both the movie and the series, but it works better in the series, like, continuity-wise, because they already knew what they were going for.
It's almost catastrophically, like, self-destructive in the series if they were ever going to write sequels. I guess they could have cut that out, but then they wouldn't have that. And that's kind of cool. So, yeah, do you... What... Oh, yeah, we were talking about Mr. Poe a while ago.
Oh, that's right. So, Mr. Poe is played by someone in the movie. He's played by K. Todd Freeman in the series, which... I think it's just that, like, he's a lot more of a quirky cartoon character in the series than he is in the movie.
Right. He's played by let me Timothy Spall in the movie.
I think that was Peter Pettigrew in in Harry Potter. Yeah.
That's
well. Anyway,
something. But yeah. I think. In the show, they definitely had some sort of like contract thing where he had to be in every single episode, because he gets crammed in there and like does his little silly thing all the time.
When in the books he appears a maximum of like 2 or 3 times to like drop the orphans off and pick them up after their new guardian fucking dies. Yeah.
But yeah, one thing that they did adapt better in the movie is Poe. He's sort of like an English gentleman almost.
Yeah.
Which is definitely the vibe I got from him. Although
which is ironic because Poe is like literally just not English.
Right.
Like Poe the guy. But anyway, I feel like he works in the context of the series, even though it's not like a faithful adaptation of like who and what he is in the books.
He's definitely a potential weak link in the series, but I think he works most of the time. Occasionally he gets like yelly and weird, but most of the time it's fine.
Yeah. And I mean the series takes a lot of liberties, especially in the early books, with the proportion that each character takes up of like their respective book. So like Poe is, I actually can't remember whether Poe is like a really big plot point in the Reptile Room, because he is there for like most of Reptile Room the series. Right.
He's not really a big deal in the books, and he's barely there at all in the movies. One thing they had to do when adapting some of the shorter books to 90 minutes is they added some more stuff that it's sort of hit and miss, but one of those things is that the orphans have to do this like a whole trial process to like make sure that to like prove that Count Olaf killed their guardian in the second book, which just wasn't really a thing as far as I can remember.
Yeah, I seem to remember that there was like something to that effect where like they originally thought that it was a snake who had killed Montgomery, because that's of course what Count Olaf planned, and then the children have to prove that it wasn't. But like, I don't know if it was as involved.
Right, they definitely didn't like rifle through his luggage and like build silly contraptions and be like, this is how they killed him, with the silly contraption.
Don't get cast started on the silly contraptions in the series.
Oh my god, the CGI and like just like occasional really stupid stuff in the TV show is so. It's honestly, I like it. It's camp, like, but like they get in like they. There's a part in the third book where 2 characters get in like a cartoon plane, and it's just a cartoon. Like it's literally animated.
It is like it's a so 3D obviously CGI
of like a child's toy plane.
Yeah, it's yeah, the weird parent subplot.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it was definitely my least favorite part of the series. It's just so extraneous. It does not go anywhere.
Yeah, so basically what we're talking about is the series adds an all-new subplot where two characters who you assume to be the parents of the Baudelaire children are actually alive, and they're like trying to get back home. And at the end, haha, dumbass, it wasn't them, it was other people's parents.
Yeah, and what gets me about it is that it's like almost relevant to the larger plot of the series.
Right, because those other people are important, but
yeah,
they become important in the books and functionally in the show after their parents die.
Yeah, their whole thing is that the Baudelaires meet them in the 5th book when they attend like a boarding school, and they bond over both being like sets of orphans, and so like it's really, really important that they don't have parents.
Right, so the second you open the door and you hear that it's those guys, you know that like there's just no point anymore to be like for a like plot beat that was only there for a plot twist. Like, once you know exactly what's going to happen, it loses all meaning. In a way that most, like, adaptation... Like, you could say, oh, well, I know what's going to happen in all the books. But, like, the books don't... The purpose of the books is not just to surprise you in the way that the purpose of that plot point is.
Yeah, I feel like it's... I don't think it's that it takes up an inordinate amount of the series runtime, because it really doesn't. It's just like asides every so often. It's just like it's such a wide-ranging subplot to keep track of for something that ends in like a cutesy fake out and then goes nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's just like a personal gripe. And like the scenes themselves are fun. It's just it feels so extraneous. But that's basically my biggest gripe with the series, at least so far. Back to Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we'll talk about the first book in more detail now then, unless you have anything more to say, just like regarding characters.
Oh, yeah, no. You should go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, like we said, the first book sort of revolves around them meeting Count Olaf and him trying to get Violet to marry him on stage in a theatrical production by getting his next door neighbor, who's like a judge, to be in the play and having the play say the exact like words required for it to be like an actual wedding. I don't know the legality of this. I'm assuming it wouldn't work in real life.
It's called The Marvelous Marriage.
Right, it's written by Al Funcoot. Haha, get it? It's like
it's an anagram.
Yeah. all versions of this story just love themselves some wordplay. There are 0 proper nouns that aren't either like wordplay.
I have a whole page dedicated to like what I think all of the literary references in Count Olaf is.
Like their last name, Baudelaire, Charles Baudelaire, is like a poet or something.
Yes, and you know what an interesting thing about Baudelaire is that when he was young, his parents died and left him an enormous fortune, which then came under the purview of like a motley crew of executors and guardians.
That's actually kind of funny.
Which is awesome.
You want to know another funny thing about Baudelaire? We talked about Charles Baudelaire in our last episode about Space Funeral, because there's actually a passage from a Charles Baudelaire poem in Space Funeral.
Oh, Charles Baudelaire, secret
I don't know
if
you've listened to that one yet.
I have not listened to that one yet, but I need to.
There's a little nugget.
Another interesting thing about Baudelaire is that he's called a poète maudit, which is a cursed poet, and it is a French term for a poet whose life is really fucking shitty.
Wow. Like Art from Adversity, the man.
I mean, yeah, kind of. I wrote, because he had a pretty sad life, all things considered, and like he kind of did. But I think that's very funny.
Did he ever get his enormous fortune?
I don't... Well, I think he got at least some of it, but, you know, it was like fucked around with.
Picked cleaned by the vultures by that point.
Yeah, so the man's politics were incoherent. He participated in the French Revolution of 1848, but he supported Poe's aristocratic views and those of Count Joseph de Maistre, a monarchist and vanguard figure in the counter-Enlightenment, which is certainly interesting. But yeah, no. I feel like at least Poe and Baudelaire are actually like really, really clever and deep literary references.
If you haven't gotten this yet, Daniel Handler's a fucking nerd. He's such a fucking nerd. It's so
a regular
obnoxious.
Lewis Hynes.
Right, he's got like his fucking Coke bottle glasses, and he probably uses the nerd emoji.
What's that even mean?
Anyway, so yeah, the next door neighbor who we were talking about, Justice Strauss. Do you have anything to say about her name?
No, I think I only wrote down like the main characters.
I swear that's gotta be a reference to something. I feel like I know the name Strauss from something, but I don't know what it is. And
yeah, no, I mean, I have the main ones. So like the Baudelaire's, Poe, obviously. Eleonora Poe is the name of his wife in the series, and this reference to one of his poems.
That's cool. His wife in the series is actually like basically a character who shows up in a couple books in the middle of the series, Geraldine Julienne, who's a reporter who's always like saying bad things about the Baudelaires, and they sort of just combined her, like took her character.
They put her in a particle accelerator with Poe's wife.
Yeah, and copied her onto Poe's wife, which I think is fine. Like and I know why they did this. It's because Poe had some contract thing where he needed to be in every episode, and if his wife is there, then he can tag along to be in every episode.
That's like such a tinfoil hat thing, but at the same time, I feel like it's absolutely true.
Watching the show, you can tell, because we just watched the first part of the fourth book, and they just like crammed him in there right at the end, because you could tell they needed to.
Oh, is the mystery caller? Is the mystery caller in the book too?
Not that I remember.
Okay. Huh. Well, I mean, I guess Poe... K. Todd Freeman, hi.
Hi, K. Todd. How's it going?
If his name is Todd K. Freeman, I'm going to feel so bad.
Oh my god. Listen, like, if getting facts wrong is going to be a problem, I'm going to have to edit this podcast for, like, 4 to 5 hours.
That's brutal.
Okay, so, yeah. Justice Strauss is their kindly next-door neighbor who always wanted children. And is easily hoodwinked into schemes.
Her 3 character traits are that she is a judge, she is a sad... Empty nester is if you've had kids but they moved out.
Yeah, but like, she just built a nest and expected there to be stuff in it.
Yeah. And she is easily hoodwinked into participating in dubiously legal schemes that involve marriage.
So, yeah. I guess we can start talking about the train scene.
Oh my god.
So, in the series, the first book ends with the play The Marvelous Marriage, Count Olaf is forcing the orphans to be in it by holding Sunny, the youngest one, captive in a cage. Oh, we didn't talk about how the orphans have, like, one thing they're good at.
Oh, yeah. Violet's thing is inventing whenever she ties her hair back up into a ponytail with a ribbon. It's because she's about to invent some cool gadget that'll get you out of your, like, jam.
Sometimes these gadgets are like, oh, she used this to make, like, a pulley or something. And sometimes it's like she built a robot that saved them.
I feel like the books are actually pretty good about making her inventions like vaguely believable given the situation.
Which is, it's kind of weird that they bother, considering that Sunny's thing is that she can like use her teeth to like weld and sword fight and like strip logs and stuff.
It's like, I feel like Daniel Handler really wrote himself into a corner with that one because, like, Violet's thing is that she's an inventor. Klaus's thing is that he's read every book.
Right, so he's basically just a nerd.
Yeah, but Sunny's thing is she's a baby. She doesn't have a personality yet, so her thing is that she has really sharp teeth and she can bite stuff.
Yeah, she's a walking multi-tool. Well, a crawling multi-tool.
It reminds me of those, like, games on the Wii that were like technically 2-player, but only insofar as the second one can like wave their Wii remote around. She's
like the co-star from Mario Galaxy.
Exactly. You can like point at stuff.
You can use her to collect extra things.
But yeah. So they give her, they make her really good at cooking, like, as she ages up throughout the series, which is, like, at least more of a thing.
But it's still, like, kind of stupid that, like, a 2-year-old is, like, making, like, dishes and shit.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like if Daniel Handler was going to jump that shark with Sunny, he did it way earlier, because she speaks in nonsense baby talk, but, like, each of her nonsense baby talk vocalizations actually means something very eloquent and relevant to the situation that, like, the narrator translates on the spot, and the Baudelaires understand, but the adults do not.
Like, she'll say something like, or, like, the narration will read, Sunny said Owaga, which the children knew meant
Which
blank.
the children understood to be the entire text of Shakespeare's The Tempest,
right.
or whatever.
And on the TV tropes page, there was a list of all the things that those are referenced to. A lot of them are just like non sequitur words in different languages, or like weird names.
I think at one point she says chutzpah.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Yiddish stuff in there,
which is awesome.
I like. Because these books are like the books and movie are definitely for kids. The show is more for like adults who read the books as kids.
I guess so. I honestly, that's something that I wanted to ask you, because I genuinely cannot tell what the target demographic for the series is.
I can't either, and I think that's kind of why the series was a bit of a flop and almost didn't get a third season.
It didn't?
Yeah.
Or almost didn't?
You know the thing with Netflix shows where they get 2 seasons and then they get canceled?
Yeah, but I thought people liked it.
Oh, people love the Series of Unfortunate Events show, but people love it, but like masses do not flock to it in the same way.
So it's not a Stranger Things.
Right. It needs to be like a Stranger Things or a Big Mouth where it becomes very popular for Netflix to review it.
That kind of sucks. I guess it's like...
But luckily, the show got 3 seasons, which covered all the books.
Yeah. They didn't pull an Allegiant with that one.
Yeah. Or pull Cowboy Bebop, where they adapted half the episodes, set up interesting stuff to come, and then didn't renew the show.
What the hell?
Because the show is terrible, but no one would ever say that like the live action Cowboy Bebop did not like have interesting things that it was going to do. Like the show was very interesting, but anyway, me and Holly will talk about that for hours.
A highly deformed cow fetus,
right? Or a highly deformed one of my favorite shows.
So yeah, we're all glad that the show actually got to finish. Like that
would be so sad.
But we're not glad that the movie got to finish naturally.
They should have cut the movie off after like 4 minutes when Jim Carrey did his first dinosaur noise.
Oh my god. I wrote the Count Olaf intro scene just keeps going on. The camera can't get enough of him. None of the other casting is an issue. Mostly comes from the difference in scope, I guess. So, yeah, no. I just...
The camera's just constantly glued to him. It's because he is ostensibly the star, which just doesn't work.
Yeah,
and I think that's why they stopped with the third book, because the fourth one has by far the least Count Olaf involvement in the entire series.
He's like the receptionist for a little bit.
Yeah, but he's mostly. I guess the 8th one has him talking exclusively over a loudspeaker, so I don't know how they would have done that one either.
I guess the problem with the 4th one is that it mostly features his henchmen, like, fucking around at the mill, to which you might respond if you were a movie watcher who hadn't read the books. Who?
Yeah.
Like...
and you might also respond with, where's Jim Carrey? I want to see him do that, like, Stegosaurus thing again.
God damn it. Yeah, no. I wrote the Olaf Troop gags aren't funny, they're just more Jim Carrey, like...
Right.
I always hate when they cast people because, you know, there's somebody, like, they're a big actor, and they're just playing the big actor instead of the role. Like, that generally really gets under my skin. Exactly, like Klaus from the series,
who apparently played a robot in his breakout hit.
Looks. Is there like any substantive reason for you like hating Louis Hynes this much?
It's just kind of funny.
That's fair.
All right. So anyway, the train. Olaf manages to get like legal guardianship of them. And he's like, I can just kill them and take their fortune. Book Olaf wouldn't have done that. He's not stupid. He wouldn't know that didn't work.
So Jim Carrey Olaf parks the orphans in his car conveniently on a train track. Does this funny comedy bit where he like extends like a slinky and checks the train schedule, and then accidentally locks them in a car and goes to like a convenience store.
Yeah, his car's like a cartoony thing with like wheels and dials and like a phone inside.
Yeah.
I don't know if phones in cars is a real thing, but
it was a real thing in like the 90s.
I guess he just has a weird phone.
But he has a stupid like rotary phone in his car, which most assuredly was not a thing.
Yeah, so anyway, the orphans have to, like, rig up a thing using the littlest elf TM, like, bobblehead to, like, switch the tracks. It's stupid. Rest assured, it's really stupid. Like, for some reason, it's no more contrived than, like, some of the more contrived Violet inventions, but, it just feels so much more stupid because it's got a cartoon bobblehead on it.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
And then he's like, blast! I can't believe that I did not kill them with the train and get their money. And then Poe's like, you rascal, I'm taking them away from you.
Scallywag, yeah. And so then he takes them to Montgomery's house, which is like... Montgomery is a herpetologist.
All of the adaptations of this work would love for you to laugh at the fact that his name is the same thing twice. They say really his full name at every opportunity.
Montgomery is a herpetologist, a man who studies snakes, and he will not let you forget it.
Right, he has like a cartoonishly well-locked room in his house with all of his snakes in it.
One might even call it a
reptile room, which is the name of the second book.
Roll credits, but no, he's
Bad Beginning. There, we got that one in there too.
Oh. But how am I supposed to understand that the book is called The Bad Beginning if one of the characters... I
guess you could say that was a pretty bad beginning for them.
Exactly. If Justice Strauss doesn't like turn to Mr. Poe in a comedy hijink at one point and say, man, that was a bad beginning for those orphans, wasn't it?
Yeah, I hope it has a good later.
Anyway, so yeah, Uncle Monty's actually, Montgomery's actually a really good guardian to them. He's a very sweet man, but
despite him acting like suspicious and weird, but I think that's just because he was part of a secret organization and is weird and paranoid.
Yeah, so he's weird and paranoid, but other than that, he's great. But he eventually gets killed by the man who is pretending to be his assistant, Count Olaf, of course, in disguise as Stefano. Right.
In the movie, something they do is they make his disguises actually somewhat convincing. Like, he does really believable accents and, like, has, like, pretty good bald cap on and stuff.
His Stefano disguise in the movie was, like, surprisingly good.
Like, to the point where we were watching this movie with Holly, and she didn't even realize at first that it was Count Olaf.
Yeah, because she didn't read the books or anything. So.
Yeah, she's playing the role of an adult in one of these
It's
stories.
great.
Who cannot tell that. But yeah, he's like, I don't know, put makeup over his tattoo thing.
So there's this element in the book, The Candy Shop War, which is about magical candy.
Like, I know this isn't your favorite book, but it seems like it's your favorite
awesome.
book.
It is one of my favorite books.
I know you liked it as a child because the protagonist has the same name as you.
That's not the only reason that I liked it, but it was actually absolutely fantastic.
I mean, I've read the book too, and the sequel, The Candy Shop War 2, Arcade Catastrophe.
That was a catastrophe.
Talk about jumping the shark. Like, seriously. Like, they have, like, stamp... So, like, the plot of that... We're just gonna do a Candy Shop War tangent. Fuck it.
That's awesome. Candy Shop War is so good.
The plot of the book is that they have, like, candies that give them superpowers, and then the second one, they have stamps.
They have the fucking arcade stamps that you used to get, like, on your 10th birthday when you went to, like, the local Lucky Strike or whatever. And that's just not the same. I am sorry, but it is not.
But, like, okay, arcade stamps. But then they also have, like, the guy who runs the arcade have his own kinds of candy, too.
Yeah, because, like, I don't know. Brandon Mole, if you're listening to this, I love you, but I feel like the stamps thing was a real misfire. It was a mistake. I think the magic of the magic candy is that, like, it can get the kid's mind going with, like, how they make it, like, the process, the production. Like, is it in the ingredients? Is it in, like, the way that they...
Like, now you're going to be telling me that there's, like, a third version where they have, like, bowling alley scorecards that give them abilities.
Like, please no.
Like, mini golf scorecards. Just, like, things that kids find kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, we're going to go play mini golf at, like, the magic mini golf place, and I'll get, like, the flying mini golf ability.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Anyway, what were you gonna say about this?
Oh my god, this is so embarrassing because it's gonna be like this one tiny little throwaway joke about, like, there's this candy called the white fudge that the villain of the book who makes magical candy gives to all the townspeople. And the white fudge's thing is basically that it, like, renders magic candy ineffective on the person who consumed it, and it also makes them really, really oblivious, and it makes them addicted to the white fudge. So, like, Mrs. White, the villain's whole scheme is to give everyone around the kids white fudge so that they can do their, you know, candy hijinks without the...
And she starts out as sort of like the kindly elder in the book before being revealed as the villain, and she's like, oh, just sort of give this to your family and they won't bother you.
Yeah. She's like getting the kids' families addicted to magic opioids.
Yeah.
We just all let that slide.
Oh, what was they gonna say?
And so the joke I was gonna make is that all the adults in
are, like,
series
on white fudge.
Are on white fudge.
Yeah, it's sort of like in the Percy Jackson series, like every sort of like magical realism type story has like a reason why like it's okay that they're doing this, and
magic
no
otherworld
one like gets on their case.
Yeah,
Percy Jackson has a similar thing where there's like a magic mist that like makes people not see.
It's like... Yeah, it's like, I feel like there are broadly like three categories. The ones that like explicitly justify it with a discrete plot element, like the white fudge. There are the ones that just have it as like a latent element of the world that is explained, but it's not really manipulable in any way, like the mist from Percy Jackson and Spiderwick Chronicles. Which is awesome.
And Fablehaven, another Brandon Mull joint.
Fablehaven's so good. Brandon Mull's such a good writer. I'm sorry, Brandon, I love you. And then there are the ones that...
I'm sorry I implied that you have flaws.
Exactly. And then there are ones that just don't justify it at all, like Lemony Snicket, like all of the...
Right, but like replace magic with like evil. Like, they're just unable to...
Just the concept of human evil.
They do not have the level 1 spell detect evil.
Exactly. They didn't multi-class into any sort of spellcasting.
So yeah, Monty was gonna take them to Peru to like look for geckos or some shit.
On the Prospero, I get it, you've read The Tempest.
I haven't read The Tempest. Is the Prospero a thing?
Prospero is one of the central characters in The Tempest. Stefano is also a character in The Tempest.
Is Montgomery a character in The Tempest?
No, he's not.
Yeah, like, a lot of these things are references for the sake of references. Like, this book was written by Klaus Baudelaire.
Which I don't have a problem with. It's just, like, maybe two in the same book is a little bit gratuitous. And two that are, like, so central, too. Like, the Prospero is mentioned multiple times, and obviously Stefano is really important because he's secretly Count Olaf. Right.
So, yeah, Stefano, he's pretty good disguise, but he's annoying because he's still Jim Carrey. He's annoying in an entirely different way in the show, where the disguise is comically bad, which I think is more accurate to the books.
It is more accurate to the books. I will say that Jim Carrey's less annoying in Reptile Room because his disguise is good enough that like it muffles his obnoxious acting in the same way that like in EDM Song is slightly less annoying if it's like being pumped through two walls instead of you having to be in the same room as the speakers.
Right, like when the people next to you are playing it in the middle of the night.
It's still annoying.
instead of your roommate playing it in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
Right. Stefano is the dorm room wall of Jim Carrey.
Yeah, truly, that's what I've always said.
I'm not entirely sure if this metaphor tracks or not. I think I got lost somewhere.
Anyway,
So yeah, Stefano, his disguise in the show is a lot worse, but it's Patrick Harris. He's doing a really annoying voice. Stefano is by far my least favorite disguise in the entire series.
From him specifically?
Yeah, just because he's so annoying.
He is pretty annoying.
He's like doing a like cartoon nerd voice.
Waluigi.
Yeah.
But
kind of like Waluigi.
And I guess I feel like Stefano in the series is by far the closest that Neil Patrick Harris gets to like Jim Carrey levels of like distractingly obnoxious.
Right. I was really worried when I watched it the first time because I had seen the movie before, and I remember.
You mean you didn't turn it off in disgust after like 5 seconds when their arcade claw contraption comes out of the picnic basket?
Oh, yeah. At the start this is going to be like a sort of a tangent because it's not. But, like, to demonstrate Violet's ability to create, like, stuff at the start, or to invent things at the start of the show, they have her, like, get this machine for retrieving specially marked skipping stones. And Klaus is like, I read a book to help with this thing, so you know he has a thing, too.
Which is so funny, because half of Klaus's contributions in this series genuinely boil down to, like, I read a book, and it really helped her out. I promise.
And, like, people will be like, I guess you could say you've been through a series of unpleasant things. And then, like, Klaus would be like, The Odyssey was a book about a guy who went through a series of unpleasant things.
Webster's Dictionary defines inordinate as...
Right. But yeah, the stupid machine pisses me off. That really worried me, but I didn't turn it off because, I don't know... Patrick Warburton said something funny in the first couple minutes. And
Patrick Warburton existed, and you were like, wow.
I was like, oh, you.
Patrick Warburton could look directly into the camera and say, you're a fucking idiot and I hate you. And I would be like, yes, Patrick, I love this show. And I mean, he kind of does. He's like, watch anything else, please.
Yeah. Alright, so yeah, we were talking about Stefano. Monty's dead.
Yeah, so Stefano comes, and there's actually this really menacing moment that is preserved in all three sort of like media, like the books, the movie, and the series.
I don't remember it in was it in the show?
I actually don't know if it was in the show.
I think they cut it from the show.
What the fuck? Okay.
Which is weird, because they have like the whole stupid thing where they go to see a movie in the show, but they couldn't do that. Arguably the best scene from the movie.
In an uncharacteristically good Jim Carrey moment, there's this shot where the Baudelaire orphans are, of course, scared out of their minds because they know that Stefano is Count Olaf. And so they're kind of taking refuge in their room as Stefano waits outside in a rocking chair, rocking back and forth with a knife. And
yeah, and you can like see it glint.
Yes, and the books describe that every time the orphans peer out of their room, they see the glint of Stefano's knife in the moonlight. And
yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
So they can't go talk to Montgomery in private to get help or whatever.
Yeah, and so when they awake in the morning, they find that Montgomery has died. And obviously he was killed by Stefano, but then they spend the rest of the book having to prove that. And so, I feel like it's uncharacteristic.
He's blaming it on a cartoon snake.
He's blaming it on a cartoon snake
called the Incredibly Deadly Viper, but it was named that because it was a prank. It's actually nice, and he just wants to let it out of its cage to scare people who like make fun of him because of his name,
which like works way better than you like think it would in the description, because Montgomery is like excellently characterized to be the exact sort of person who would do that.
Right, like. Incredibly petty / positive.
Yeah. And so the one other thing that I wanted to say about the Stefano like knife scene is I think it's like uncharacteristic of the movie because Jim Carrey makes Olaf such an absurd cartoon villain that you pretty much can't take him seriously as a threat at any stage.
But for some reason that still works, and then me and Holly have a term for when a scene or like a joke or something is going really well and it's really funny, and then they ruin it by explaining it or like calling attention to it at the very end. And he does this. He like says some Jim Carrey quip like, "Do you have a hall pass?"
Oh my god, he literally said that.
We call that motherfucker that's called a job, because there's a like Key and Peele sketch where like there's a joke, and at the end like it gets explained with that line, and it's so much funnier without that line. So that's what we call it when something's like doing well and then it shoots itself in the foot for no reason.
Motherfucker, that's called a job.
Yeah.
That's a really good term. I'm going to start using that.
Add it to TV tropes.
But yeah, no. I think it sticks out because it's such a good scene, like, on its own terms, but also it is, like, so in character for book Count Olaf, who is genuinely a menacing force in the Baudelaire's lives. And both the movie and the series really make him a cartoon a lot more than he is in the books.
Right.
But the movie is just so
egregious. He's like a menacing cartoon in the show, at least.
Yeah. Like, he has... Neil Patrick Harris kind of knows when to be serious and when to be cartoony.
They don't undercut every serious moment with a joke the way they do in the movie. Exactly.
And in that way, Count Olaf in the series really reminds me of the Doctor from Doctor Who is a really tricky role to play because it requires an excellent command of like both comedic timing and serious dramatic acting, and it demands that you like turn on a dime from one to the other in a way that like few other pieces of media really do, because it's like really outlandish and sci-fi and cartoony, but like it also gets incredibly earnest and like incredibly serious sometimes, just because that's kind of the way it is as a show. And so like Neil Patrick Harris is genuinely a very talented actor in his ability to be really, really funny and like carry a joke and kind of have this stage presence, but also be a genuinely menacing force. And I think the series handles that a lot better than the movie, which, as you said, like,
right,
everything is a joke.
The
like,
series leans a lot more into being a black comedy than the books, which were just like pure sadism. But I think it does a very good job of balancing it.
The books have a way darker sense of humor, I think, than even the series.
Yeah, which is weird considering the books are the one that is most explicitly targeted as kids, I think, because like kids don't really like Jim Carrey. Like, he's not like a actor in a lot of kids movies.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what's going on with Jim Carrey's.
Yeah, I don't know who he's for.
Who is Jim Carrey?
Because like, I guess really
I'm
dumb
sorry,
adults.
Jim. You seem like a great person in real
He's
life.
actually an anti-vaxxer, I'm pretty sure.
No, never mind.
So yeah, you want to start talking about the third book now?
Yeah, sure. The Wide Window.
The Wide Window. There, I just had to make sure we got the...
Man, I wonder what this book could feature prominently.
A cliff.
So the Baudelaire orphans are again dropped off by Mr. Poe, this time at the house of Aunt Josephine, who lives at the top of a very large lake called Lake Lachrymose. Josephine's one character trait, as opposed to Montgomery being a snake guy, is that she is...
a scared guy.
Yeah. She's scared of everything, including but not limited to realtors. And so she...
Yeah, she's scared of, like, doorknobs, because if you touch them, the handle could shatter into millions of pieces and go in your eyes, so she just says to push on the wood of the door, which presumably means she leaves the front door of her house unlocked, which I feel like is significantly more dangerous than the average doorknob.
Significantly less in character for her.
Right. Yeah. She's afraid of, like, cooking, so they have cold soup all the time.
Yeah.
She's afraid of, I don't know...
One thing she's not afraid of, though, is grammar. She loves grammar.
Yeah, grammar's
That's her other
favorite
character
thing.
trait, is that grammar is her favorite thing in the world. So
yeah, she gets a whole 2.
Wow. She's a very inadequate guardian to them for obvious reasons, but she kind of tries her best. Like, she's a nice person despite all of this.
Right.
So she goes into town and she meets Captain Sham, guess who that could be, and falls madly in love and brings him back home.
They should have had a different actor play each disguise Count Olaf.
That would have been awesome.
Because it meant we would have had less Jim Carrey.
Less Jim Carrey.
Yeah, they should have had Neil Patrick Harris play.
So she brings him back home, and obviously the orphans do their whole song and dance where they're like, no, he's Count Olaf.
It's Count Olaf. Look at his leg. And then he's like, I lost this leg to the carnivorous leeches. And it's like, okay.
I lost this leg to the lachrymose leeches, a central plot point because they live in the lake and they devoured Josephine's husband, and it's heavily implied that her trauma as a result of that is why she's now afraid of everything.
Right. In the show, it's explicitly confirmed. She used to be quote-unquote fierce and formidable, but now she's...
A phrase they repeat like 8 times.
Because it's a series of unfortunate events. Yeah. It's a series of unfortunate events. It's a series of unfortunate events.
But what is it, though?
But yeah, specifically they killed her husband, Ike. Because
some of these are like really highbrow literary references, like to Charles Baudelaire, and some of them are just Ike and Whistle. Whom Josephine once said could whistle with crackers in his mouth, and that's just why he's named that.
Yeah, it's funny, you see, because it's like what he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, he got killed by leeches because he didn't wait long enough after eating to swim.
Yeah, it's like the stomach cramps wives' tale thing.
Yeah, except for leeches smell bananas inside of him.
Yeah, so I feel like Wide Window kind of falls apart when you think about it too much. More so than a lot of these other books. But, so Josephine brings Captain Cham back home. The orphan's trying to convince her that he's Olaf. Obviously that doesn't work. Eventually, you know what it is? They're taken to a dinner with Captain Cham.
This is not in the movie. In the movie, right. Captain Cham just takes her out, and then, they're not looking, she writes a suicide note and conspicuously, breaks the titular wide window.
Oh, yes, the wide window that overlooks the Lake Lachrymose. Can't forget that.
She has a cartoon statue in the room that
that's the other dumbest part.
in the room that she killed herself in, and the hole in the window is in the shape of the statue. That means it's annealed glass. That means it's not tempered glass. I'm sorry. This is just something I learned today in class, is that the way glass shatters depends on the way it was baked. So annealed glass shatters into large fragments, whereas tempered glass shatters into tiny fragments. Anyway, Let's continue. This has been the thing I learned in class.
The exploding doorknobs are also tempered glass. If they can shatter into a million tiny pieces, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Annealed glass would just crack in half.
The more you know.
That's why car windshields are made out of tempered glass, so they don't slice you up.
Huh. Okay.
Anyway,
cool.
Anyway, she didn't actually kill herself. She just threw the cartoon statue out the window and then climbed down the cliff.
And goes to her jet ski that she still has, despite being terrified of the concept of doorknobs.
Right. The jet ski is from the show. It's not from the...
the jet ski is a Netflix original. Derogatory.
Yeah, it's also a cartoon jet ski.
Yeah.
But it looks kind of like a real jet ski, to the point where I think they might have taken a real jet ski and animated over it. Which
why would they do
begs the question as to why they did that at all. But yeah.
I said, Meryl Streep plays Josephine in the movie, which I wrote down as the biggest W in the movie other than the set design. I really like Meryl Streep as Josephine.
Yeah. Okay, so...
What are your thoughts on Meryl Streep as Josephine?
Meryl Streep as Josephine is probably the second best casting in the entire series of unfortunate events conceptual sphere. Patrick
Warburton,
yeah.
Okay,
Meryl Streep was not made inside a tube.
What's your top 5, in the entire cinematic universe?
I like Patrick Warburton. I like Meryl Streep. I really like Neil Patrick Harris, obviously. And then I think some of the people in some of the later books that we haven't really discussed. I love Jock Snickett's casting, Nathan Fillion.
Oh.
In the show.
Okay.
And I like Madame Lulu's casting. I feel like what they did with her in the show is really cool.
Who is she in the show?
She is she's sort of, they elaborate on her character, making her like a librarian that's like they meet up with at boarding school and like tries to help them throughout the entirety of the second season.
She's not that in the book, right?
No,
like, at all.
Madame Lulu was just some guy.
Yeah, cool.
Anyway, yeah. Do you have any favorites that I didn't mention?
Oh, it's been forever since I saw like the rest of this show. Past the part that we just watched, which was book 4, part 1. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I have like your same top 3, like Neil Patrick Harris, Meryl Streep, Warburton are really, really hard to argue with.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the guy they got to play Klaus in the series.
Oh yeah, Louis Hynes. Yeah.
That sounds like a joke at his expense. Like, he's fine.
Here's a fun fact, actually. Louis Hynes is actually like an acronym for a robot they created to do the role.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if she's like top 5 for me, but Melina Weissman.
Yeah, she definitely is a really good child actor.
She is a really good Violet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let me see.
I
have more. I
Sunny
promise.
Baudelaire.
Cartoons. Yeah, no.
But yeah, so in Josephine's suicide note, mm-hmm. she sort of says that the children are being given custody to Captain Sham.
Yeah, obviously, like Captain Sham's most favorable possible outcome. Like,
right. But there are grammatical mistakes in the letter, which they use as a cartoon code to find their way to an area called Curdled Cave.
Yeah, so she says stuff like, "My heart is as cold as Ike," which you're supposed to interpret as a C because it would be cold as ice. And so
and
those
earlier
mistakes...
she imagines that Ike is somewhere like warm.
Yeah, or some shit like that.
Which, like, is she imagining him in hell?
I imagine that Ike is very warm right now.
I'm not sure that I interpreted that joke properly.
But so all of the grammatical mistakes in the letter you're supposed to take as 2 words that mean curdled cave.
Right, if you spell out what they should be,
mm-hmm.
It tells you where she was. Cartoon shit.
I thought that was the coolest shit when I read that book and I was like 9.
Honestly, I didn't think it was the coolest shit. I thought it was dumb even then.
You should have been as gullible as I was when you were 9. But anyway...
Yeah, I think I was like 11 when I read those books. So, I had...
unfair advantage.
Yeah, I had an unfair advantage. You just can't keep up with these genetically engineered superhumans.
But yeah, so they go through this whole rigmarole where they have to steal a sailboat and get past one of Count Olaf's mini bosses in order to do so.
Right, it's the one who looks neither like a man nor a woman is how it's described in the books. It's also like a hideous blob monster.
Yeah, it's very like it's very like 90s. It's very guy finds out she was a trans woman, like vomits for comedic effect.
Right, but it's like guy finds out she was like a giant blob creature.
Guy finds out she was from the sewers.
Right, like it's almost so divorced from anything in reality that it's no longer like meaningfully like offensive.
Who plays the androgyne character in the series?
Oh, I don't know, but whoever it is, they do a good job.
It's someone I recognize, and oh my god, they're so awesome.
Yeah, they turned it from blob monster into like weird like comic relief states what is happening character,
yeah.
which for some reason really works.
Yeah, I don't know. But so their whole gimmick is that their voice is completely monotone, and they will just like remark dryly on whatever's going on, and that's all of the lines that they ever have.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It doesn't sound funny, and it probably isn't actually funny, but I like it.
I think it's funny. I think it works. But the only part of the blob monster thing that they transferred is like they're kind of tall and also like
they're like a Frankenstein monster that's like split down the center. One half is a man and one half is a woman.
Oh yeah, in the movie.
In the movie, and they're in like one shot.
Yeah. Like, completely irrelevant. Completely and totally.
But in the books, they have to sneak past the creature to like steal a boat to go over
from
to
Lagoon, Black.
Right.
But yeah, so they steal the sailboat and they sail in middle of Hurricane Herman, which has just arrived. Is
Hurricane Herman a reference to something?
Oh my god. Herman Melville.
Oh yeah, you're probably right. Is blank a reference to something with these books is always yes. It's just a matter of how obscure it is or whether or not you figured it out yet.
Yeah, I mean,
firmly believe there is not a single proper noun in these books that does not have some sort of meaning, whether it's just like a descriptive verbose word or something.
Yeah,
like lachrymose.
Yeah, lachrymose. Damocles dock, which they arrive at the beginning, is another pretty obvious one. Josephine, I still haven't been able to figure out. There's this poet, Josephine Miles, who, like, reviewers called her, like, really, really exact and precise with all of her grammatical rules and stuff, so that might be a connection, but it's not nearly as obvious as, like, fucking
Monty
Mr. Poe.
Python or whatever.
Exactly. But yeah, anyway, they sail to Curled Cave, which is the cave where Josephine was hiding out, and so the cave happens to be for sale,
right.
which is relevant.
Like, how do you sell a cave? I thought it was like a natural wonder.
The answer is Daniel Handler's going to come to your house and rip your spine out. But
right.
In any case, they get to the cave and they have a very difficult time convincing Aunt Josephine to leave the cave and to come back.
Until Klaus, that precocious little bookworm.
They're going to say precocious little bitch.
Until Louis Hynes, that precocious little bitch. Has the bright idea to be like, well, it's for sale. Realtors. Scared of realtors.
If you remember 20 minutes ago, Aunt Josephine said she was terrified of realtors, so obviously she leaves the cave screaming at once.
Honestly, that's a fear I completely get.
What? Like, really? Realtors?
Like, I don't know. It's like, it puts you in a position of being under a lot of pressure. Like, it's an entirely, like, performative activity where you're, like, expected to make constant judgments on the house that you're seeing.
I genuinely have not put even slightly as much thought into this fear as you have.
Okay,
I guess
it's not a conscious fear I have, but like the like pressure is on you in a situation where you're interacting with a realtor, whether you're a seller or a buyer.
So I guess her fear is like,
also they're harbingers of change.
They are harbingers of change. Which is kind of
scary,
I guess. But yeah, so her fear of realtors, I guess, is their 2.5 personality trait.
Right.
And so Louis Hynes leverages it.
Yeah, Louis Hynes uses his brilliant technique of looking digitally smooth.
That is like, that's such a deep and precise cut that you could not have made it better with his scalpel. Like, I don't understand why he was soft cammed in that scene in the series so hard, but he absolutely was.
Like, I think it's because there's like a lavender lighthouse. Like, I don't really get what the deal with that is. That seems kind of fruity to me, but I don't get that sort of thing.
What the fuck? Is the lighthouse ever relevant? Like,
no, I guess it's just kind of
what about
alliterative.
In the other one, All the Wrong Questions? Does it even come up there?
No, All the Wrong Questions takes place in a different... It takes place in one town the whole time for all 4 books, and All the Wrong Questions is a prequel series about young Lemony Snicket. It's alright, like, it's pretty good, but it's nothing special.
It's not nearly as unnecessary as Young Nicholas Benedict, which is a book that also exists.
I guess we're just going into every like pseudo-intellectual children's book we read.
Yeah. Every YA
I guess Canada War wasn't pseudo-intellectual, but you get what I mean.
It was just pure intellectual. Yeah. That book was awesome.
That book will be cited by the old masters.
Exactly.
But yeah, what were we saying? Oh yeah, he just looks so oddly digitally smooth in like whenever there's like even lighting. Klaus looks like he's like a creature, like a homunculus made of clay.
Klaus looks as though he's made of porcelain that has just been fired.
Right, and they smoothed it up real nice, polished it.
Like Violet looks like that too, but like there's a long and vaguely cringe tradition of them soft camming the shit out of like female faces in
right,
in
to the
movies,
point where it
like,
looks kind of normal, or at least it just doesn't look so strange.
it's precedented, but it's not nearly as precedented with Klaus, who's like a random 12-year-old.
Right, like he did something wrong, and they're like, "We're gonna make you look weird."
We're confiscating.
like he dropped someone's plate or something. Like he knocked someone's vase over. What's really gonna make your noodle is
he knocked a spiteful witch's plate over, and as a result, she confiscated his pores for the next 7 years.
Right, she cursed him to a decade of dry skin.
Yeah.
Dry, smooth, featureless skin.
What like actual
His
plot
skin is
thing?
like a fucking croconold board.
I didn't realize we'd go so hard on Louis Hynes' skin this show.
Missing screen lady should say it's time to get the skin. Anyway, we were talking about the how she's scared of realtors, so she leaves the cave with them.
Yeah, she flees Curdled Cave after Louis Hynes exposes the fact that it is for sale.
Louis Hynes exposed.
Louis Hynes got me too.
What is there to expose? He's just a little freak.
If Louis Hynes ever hears this, he's going to be devastated.
I told myself I would keep the Louis Hynes hate under control. Oops.
You should start like a Louis Hynes hate subreddit.
If I had like a platform, this would be problematic, but there are like actually only like 2 to 3 people who listen to any given episode of this podcast, so I'm not worried.
I want to start beef with Louis Hynes.
I
want this to be a
get his ass
feud.
on Twitter.
Exactly. Anyway, my people to do it.
She ate banan.
She ate, though.
She ate a lot of bananas.
Specifically a banan, which, if you recall from the previous half of the book, is a big problem if you are in Lake Lachrymose in any capacity.
Because the leeches, they come and they look really CGI'd. They're cartoon in book, and they're cartoons in the book too.
They malevolently turn you into a cartoon, like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right.
So is that what happens in Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
No, nobody gets turned into cartoons. There's one. The villain at the end is revealed to be a cartoon, but there's no like montage of him being like, "No, no."
Audio volume really went up.
It wasn't as loud as when I was laughing while I was hating on Louis Hynes.
Hating on Louis Hynes is the only thing that brings me joy anymore.
I am hate on Louis. There is nothing to my nature but endless hate.
If Louis has 1,000 haters, I'm one of them.
I'm just gonna call this like Louis Hynes Hate Fest, including a brief review of the A Series of Unfortunate Events movie.
Yeah. Which is so sad because I feel like Jim Carrey deserves like so much more of the hate for being really fucking annoying.
It's just not interesting to hate on someone who deserves it.
Like Louis Hynes is just innocently like doing his absolute best.
Like this is like hating on like Rupert Grint.
I mean, yeah, I don't even. Rupert Grint was like by far the worst child actor in the first one.
But
But I think they're all like good by the end.
Yeah. He played Ron in Harry Potter.
She's got to sort out her priorities.
Okay, so yeah, she gets eaten and killed by leeches.
Yeah, so Josephine gets eaten and killed by leeches.
Well, no, Count Olaf, or Captain Shorium, shows up in his
get
like,
it because
yacht.
Sham means fake. Yeah.
Shows up in his like yacht to save them, and so that he can get their enormous fortune.
Or as Neil Patrick Harris would say, their enormous fortune.
Fortune.
Which I would fucking hate if it was Jim Carrey saying that.
Right. You'd be like, Jim, you're not funny. Say it the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a flirting versus harassment thing.
You made that exact joke like the first time.
I know, but that was like 2 weeks ago, so I can be forgiven for making it again.
I feel like it's also incredibly apt. Like, Neil Patrick Harris could do exactly the same thing.
Hello, human resources.
Yeah. Oh, you're sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, he shows up and he's like, he pulls them onto his yacht and he pushes Aunt Josephine into the water where she gets brutally devoured by leeches.
Yeah.
Like, as maybe with the exception of the thing that looks neither like a man nor a woman, Madame Lulu, this is one of the most brutal deaths in the series.
That's true. It really is.
I guess a lot of
got like stabbed, I guess.
Yeah, I guess a lot of characters get burnt to death, but like you don't like see it like you do with the thing that looks like neither like a man nor a woman in the in the books.
It's true. There's a lot of death in this series. The arsone's more of like an abstract concept. It's almost to the extent that it's like a literary theme.
Every major surviving character dies at the end of the 12th book.
Awesome.
So the show changed it so that it's more ambiguous. This is where the third book ends, with Captain Sham's trickery getting revealed as Sunny uses her beaver skills to bite open his
fake peg leg.
Fake peg leg.
I'm not even going to go into the logic of that, because I feel like the circumference of like a peg leg that has to conceal a real leg would have to just be a real leg,
right? Like. And in like the show, they just had his leg like hiding up somewhere, like in his coat,
which is kind of silly.
I don't know. This one doesn't stand up to a lot of scrutiny to me.
Everything is fine. Anyway, so in the series, it progresses essentially as in the book, except that the Baudelaire orphans like actively run away to the Lucky Smells lumber mill, which they think holds a clue about their parents'
because they found a picture of it.
Yeah.
In Josephine's safe.
Yeah.
This is just ties into like the secret organization stuff being set up from the start in the show, which is one of the best aspects of the show, because it makes the boring ass first books not so boring.
Yeah, something we should clarify is that the VFD, the secret organization, is a very, very important part, to the extent that it's essentially the plot of the latter half of the books, but it is non-existent in the first couple of books. However, it is set up from the very beginning of the series, and so in this series, the Baudelaire orphans run away to the Lucky Smells lumber mill because they think that it holds some kind of, like, answers about the organization and their parents, whereas in the books, Poe just kind of takes them to the mill.
Because he's, like, a bad person.
Or something.
Yeah. So, but in the movie, neither of those things happens because they cut the mill entirely. Instead, they get sent to the climax of the first book, which we already kind of discussed.
It's like they fucking landed on the go-to-jail space.
Right, like they had to go back.
Yeah. So
the thing is, the marriage is significantly less climactic than all the stuff with like the leeches and like sailing through a hurricane.
Yeah, because the stakes of the marriage are like, I mean, I guess it's
like
it's sort of game over the Baudelaires
are functionally the same in that the series will end if either of those things happens. But like in universe, the stakes are death versus question mark. Like it's just not like not as interesting, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, like the orphans live on even if the worst happens and Violet gets married. They can still like escape or whatever, hypothetically. But like if they get devoured by leeches, they're literally dead.
I do understand wanting to make the finale of the movie based entirely around like a Count Olaf's scheme, because he is the main villain, instead of, oh, watch out for those leeches, and then he shows up at the end to push someone into them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Fair. I think it's a bad decision, but I think making a movie out of 3 books in any situation is a bad decision. It's not as bad as Scott Pilgrim, where they made a movie out of 6 books.
But
it
is that the
it was kind
is that the Michael Cera one?
Yeah.
Oh.
I actually kind of like that movie, but not for the same reason I like the books.
Whereas this movie doesn't really have its own redeeming qualities.
Right. It has a cool credits sequence.
Oh, good for it, I guess.
I mean, like, the credits sequence is, like, animated in a kind of cool way.
In kind of the style of, like, the weird, charcoaly kind of drawings from the book. I don't know any art words.
Yeah. The weird art words drawing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, do you have anything you want to say, like, regarding the story as a whole, or anything, like, super...
I really liked one of the rare decisions the movie made that I
genuinely
liked more than the books is there's this part after they figure out the secret behind the suicide note where Hurricane Herman is now raging, and so they have to get out of the house, which is supported very precariously by stilts above the lake, and so they have to escape the house, but in doing so, like, a series of like comedy hijinks. I'm gonna leave right now, but like a series of unfortunate events occurs, and all of Josephine's absurd fears like come true. Like, I don't know, the oven comes apart and like a gas main falls down and like angles towards the doorknob, causing it to explode into a million pieces. That part was really fun. I liked that part.
Yeah, that's honestly like the kind of evolution that I would want out of a adaptation that the show does hit or miss and the movie basically doesn't do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other words that mean things?
Any other words that mean things?
Which here mean like any other names that are meaningful to anyone?
Oh, let me see. So I sort of tried to think a little bit about why the movie just feels like it doesn't work so powerfully in comparison with the series. And I think, like, to an extent, it's an unfair comparison. I think you've pointed this out before, that, like, this series has exponentially more time to, like, characterize the characters and sort of build out the world a little bit more. But I do still think that, like, there's a weirdly small amount of dialogue that the kids get in the movie to, like, make them interesting and worth caring about.
Right. The kids were always not particularly interesting in the books, but they were always sort of vessels in a way that just doesn't really work in a movie.
They need to, like, they need to feel at least a little bit like actual living, breathing humans that, like, you can care about. And, like, the series has this interesting kind of staging where a lot of times the characters will stand in very stagey positions. There's a better word for this: theatrical positions.
Like blocked out and stuff?
Yeah, literally. Like, there's this scene in the Lucky Smells Lumber Mill episode where, like, all of the mill workers are, like, sitting at one end of a table or on one side of a table, and the orphans are sitting on the same side of, like, an adjacent table, and the camera kind of, like, pans
and you can
them.
imagine on, like, a stage, it'd be like the spotlight illuminating them as they talk, and then illuminating the other set of people as they talk.
Exactly.
I get what you mean. It's very, like, theatrical.
And so the series,
with the diegetic narrator and stuff.
Yeah, and so it feels like that feels way more intentional stylistically in the series, whereas in the movie, it almost feels like they just didn't give a lot of blocking to the kids. Like, they just kind of stand there.
Like, just sit around while Neil Patrick, or, well, no, Jim Carrey.
No, literally, like,
does his thing.
That is exactly what it is. Like, the kids are just there to receive Jim Carrey's stupid bullshit for, like, 90 minutes. And yeah, I don't know. It feels kind of bad because then you're not as invested in the story as you could be, because you're just like, well, these are, like, cardboard cutouts. Because they didn't get any fucking dialogue. Yeah.
All right. So, do you want to give your final verdict on this on this movie, or do you have anything else?
This here film. I feel like it has a lot going for it, like, stylistically. I think the set designs are really, really cool. I think that the music was more generic in the movie than it was in the series, but it still had some. The show has a very good score. The show has an awesome score. The opening is really good. They do this thing where they change a verse of the opening for every book. The opening song is called "Look Away," and it's all about how you're a dumb moron idiot for watching this show because it's so depressing. Right, which is something that Lemony Snicket tells you at the start of every book too. Yeah. The score in the movie is passable, but nothing really stands out. Yeah, it's like, it's Disney generic, I would say. So, like, it works, but it's not fun and interesting and filled with, like, an accordion in the way that the series score is.
yeah, don't watch the movie. It's not even really good as a hate watch.
It's like just technically competent enough to be like boring to hate watch.
Right.
Watch the series and hate on
Yeah.
Lewis Hynes instead.
Right. Hate on someone who doesn't deserve it at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. All right. Do you have anything to plug? Do you have like? I know you don't have Twitter. Do you? Want,
I don't have anything. I'm not a public figure.
You don't like write like stupid shit and like post it on your like analysis board or something. Like I don't. There's probably some sort of like super pretentious social media that like
awesome.
exists out there that you would totally be a part of.
No, God, catch my klezmer performances every Tuesday at the
What?
The Underground Coffee House is a really specific location. I don't want to dox you.
People know I go to Western Washington University.
Oh my God.
And they know my last name. It's okay.
They could Cape Fear you at any moment.
Yeah. That would be bad.
It would be.
I haven't seen Cape Fear. I only know the Simpsons episode.
Cape Fear is awesome.
I know the general plot because I watched a YouTube video about all the references in the Simpsons episode to the...
Oh, we should watch Cape Fear.
Yeah,
so
the remake or the...
The original.
Okay. Anyway... yeah, I do have things to plug. If you like me, you can follow me at iChortle on Twitter, and you can send in emails to podcastpodcast@gmail.com and have them read live on air. Woo!
Do you have like a cute transition music into the listener mail segment, like in Stuff You Missed in History Class?
No, because no one has sent me any
No.
mail. Because I on Twitter I was like really aggressive about it, like don't send me like spam, I'll be really mad. And then I think Lola threatened to beat people up.
That's awesome.
Anyway.
I can't match that. I am a skin and bones.
Right. I that wasn't like me being like, are you gonna beat anyone up?
You should steal one of the marimba players from the Performing Arts Center and get them to do a cute little like transition music segment.
We'll see when the letters start pouring in, like at the end of Miracle on 34th Street. Anyway, bye-bye.
See ya.